if all three of you can reflect on an important checklist that you were to build for any business owner to watch out for when they are about to raise capital or potentially looking to get a significant new shareholder onto the register.
Thanks, Raghu. Well, from a tax perspective, and it might be a little odd starting with tax, because tax doesn't drive these decisions, they are commercial decisions. The key point would be from an ATO perspective is what structure are you using to acquire that investment? Is it foreign or is it domestic? And then what, in circumstances where there is a mix of debt and equity, what are the commercial non-tax reasons for the use of debt?
I'll answer this in two parts. One, broadly from a commercial and business reasons. One, obviously whether the founding team, whether the team is solid and whether they have a credibility and the confidence and commitment for the business. And second, whether the business is scalable. The two very, very important things, whatever kind of money you want to raise. Indian context particularly, we have a lot of ventures. You have more than one founder. You have 2 founders and 3 founders. The founders agreement is in place. Before the investor comes in, that is one very, very important piece. The investor looks at. Then you have the legal structure, and are there any prior liability issues? Particularly the early stage companies, they don't want to spend enough time and resources on taking care of the tax and compliance issues. They give a lenient view to these things. You must comply, though you may be a startup or an early stage, because the non-compliance to this can lead to huge consequences in terms of penalties, and the time you lose in the diligence, and also sometimes there will be discounting on the evaluation. These things are not taken care of.
Most legal firms and accounting firms will have a very beautiful 18-page, 16-category, 526 question checklist. And you do need to have those checklists because that will go through and identify really all of the things that you haven't thought about at the top of your head. Having said that, the second thing on my checklist, and it's probably really in correct order, the first thing on the list would be the people. If you don't respect, admire and trust the people who you are engaging with, you probably shouldn't do it. And there's a whole pile of reasons for that. The first is that you're going to most probably be working with these people going forward, unless it's 100% buyout and these people are walking out the door. You're probably going to be working with them going forward. Number 2, if they're dodgy, they're going to be tricking you in terms of what they're purporting to sell you. And number 3, there's going to come a time when even if they're the nicest people in the world, you're going to disagree with them, you're going to want to do different things, and you need to be able to reconcile your differences somehow. You need to be very, very aware of who's got the power to do what going forward. I continually see deals because you can have either shares, equity, or you can have debt, or some kind of hybrid. I constantly see situations where people are kind of manoeuvring or outmanoeuvring each other through use of different types of investment, different categories of investment, and who's got the voting power and who doesn't have the voting power, and how all that works from the shareholder or investor interaction perspective. So that would be the second thing, and then the long checklist.
For any young company, as they prepare for capital raising or an M&A activity, I think one of the first things as a corporate finance guy that always say, find every reason not to raise capital. As a business owner, you must find every reason not to raise capital. And if you want to raise capital, you want to know why you want to raise capital crystal clear. Figure out the use of funds like never before. The moment external money is coming into your balance sheet, you are accountable. And once you're accountable, they will definitely ask for a significant breakdown of use of funds, and then you will be answerable if you don't deliver the outcomes in the desired time period. Third, figure out your financial plan in terms of financial model. Spend time on it. It is very important to build out your model. as long as it takes, and be ruthless in cutting down your assumptions. This will be my three key takeaways from a capital raising perspective. Let's turn the dialogue a little bit.
Just before we do, man, there's just one point I wanted to underline, Bill referred to earlier, and that is the concept that everything's fine while everything's fine. You have to be prepared for a situation where there is, as Bill said, there's a disagreement with your investor, or you have to be mindful that things may not go as swimmingly as they are at the outset, 12 months, 2 years down the track, and you have to be protected for that. So it's critical that you obtain some sound advice from people who have seen transactions, capital raisings in the past, and you can just be mindful of the pitfalls. It is incredible how much time that issue or disagreement will consume and take your attention away from what you do really well in terms of making money and finding new markets for your products.
Absolutely. Thank you, Martin. So typically M&A happens in 2 or 3 different phases. If you potentially a company want to merge with somebody or potentially wanting to be acquired, they get into some sort of a confidentiality and they exchange draft terms, which is a non-binding environment where you're still negotiating different terms. And once you actually lock your deal, you go into more of a binding environment. If I may ask, what are the items of significance to be aware, mainly in a non-binding heads of agreement environment versus binding heads of agreement?
Yeah, look, with the non-binding, the first thing to be aware of is that it's non-binding. And you'd be astonished how often I get people coming to me and saying, well, we've got this heads of agreement and the other side's not doing what they're supposed to do, and it's only it's a non-binding heads of agreement, but they're still not doing what they're supposed to do. And what can we do about that? And I say, well, legally nothing, because it's non-binding. Proposition number 2 is, why is it non-binding? It's probably non-binding because it's more just meant to set out a pathway to get from where you are to get to a binding thing. And so it's kind of almost like people thinking aloud. Yes, it could be a pathway, but maybe you're better off just maybe you're just better off having like a little step plan that people are going to follow to get to a binding agreement. On the binding agreement, and look, there's so many different things there, and I don't want to take up buckets of time, but I'll just go to one thing, which is the single biggest problem I've seen from over the last, say, 3 or 4 years, is people being too soft or not having put enough thought into their dispute resolution clauses. And sometime, typically within the first 2 years, things just go off the rails. And when they go off the rails, it's usually because of a series of misunderstandings, a series of difference of weighting of factors that people think are important, and so they start to diverge in different ways. And if you haven't got anything in your agreement as to how to deal with that, there's literally no way to deal with it other than just stare at each other across the table and wait and see who's going to blink.
I mean, I don't want to distinguish between, binding and non-binding kind of a thing, but there are 4 or 5 things which come to my mind. One of them is, whether the current, management and the senior management will continue to be part of the, post-acquisition management. Now, how are their incentives are aligned? That's one issue which needs to be dealt very in advance. And there could be regulatory issue, particularly the cross-border. And the third, the form of compensation. Now the compensation could be completely cash compensation, or sometimes, obviously with the listed company, they would prefer compensation to be, stock swapped. You give stock of a acquired company to the target company shareholders. That also may involve, rid of, the timelines, and then given that the listed entity, obviously it will take more time than the, transaction happening between the 2 unlisted entities.
A tax perspective, again, it's really we've got a binding arrangement where some of those factors I referred to earlier are going to become relevant, but given that there will be a period of anywhere between 12 months, 18 months or so before you lodge your first income tax return, which will be obviously supported by a clearly stated set of accounts, it'd be very important to understand at the outset from the taxpayer side of things, what the proportion is going to be in relation to remitting income tax receipts to the Australian government. They will no doubt flow as a consequence of the percentage investment of the respective parties, but it's important that that be clear and that the compliance costs in respect of from an income tax position are also clearly stated at the outset. But these are mechanical things largely, which are secondary to the profit-making